Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching how to paint this beginner spring landscape featuring California poppies and white tulips. Without further ado, let's get painting. Today's tutorial, we're going to be using olive green, hooker's green, Prussian blue, VanDyke Brown, and orange. The paper I've taped down here is a size 5 by 7 inches. I'll be using 3 Princeton brushes in size 2, 6, and 16 round brush. And then I'll also be using a little bit of white gouache. To get started, I'm going to use my size 16 brush to do a wash of water from the top of the page to about halfway. And we're going to have a nice, vibrant sky with clouds and hints of bright blue using our Prussian blue. Okay, so we've got about to the halfway mark. And then next, I'm going to switch gears to my size 6 brush because I want to make sure I'm not going to take over the sky too much with a lot of blue. Still want some negative space here with the clouds. So to achieve that, I'm going to start right in this top area and just angle the blue downward. And I do want some pops of this bright Prussian blue, and then I'm going to kind of swoop it upward slightly again, and then just do these kind of circular motions here just to get a really loose texture against the clouds. Then I'm just going to do a little bit more blue down below, maybe carry it off slightly towards the left, and then just a little bit of a hint towards the right. And then from here, I'm just going to take some water and just up against where the Prussian blue meets the white, I simply just want to kind of do a circular motion with the tip angle of my brush here, so that way I can achieve kind of a softer blend. And again, I'm just kind of carrying my brush throughout. Allowing some of that transition area to be a little bit softer. Gonna do just a hint more of the blue in this area here, kind of more in the center. Okay. So I'm just gonna wait, I would say about 5 minutes to allow the sky and this water line here to dry. And then when we come back, we can work on our floral meadow. All right, to move on for our next step, I would like to do our green meadow next. And to begin, I am just going to kind of wet down this second half of the page with a wash of water using my size 16 brush. And I would like to get a nice wash of our olive green to start with first. And I'm gonna start towards the top, just taking a light amount. I'm just going back and forth with my brush, and then I'll work my way down. And then I'm just gonna do a second layer of saturation of the olive green towards the bottom half. That's kind of where I want more depth of color. And then from there, I'm gonna take some Hooker's Green and start to apply just a few elements of the Hooker's Green. So I'm gonna start with this left corner and just do like a loose shaded area of that green. I'll do a touch of that over towards the right, and then just a little bit above that, keeping this really loose, allowing some of the olive green to kind of pop through. Just giving this meadow a little bit of depth and texture. And then I'll do just a little bit more saturation in here towards the middle right area. And then just a touch up here as well. I'm now going to switch gears to my size 6 brush and just take a little bit of water just to help smooth out some of these transitions. We want our bleeds in this style of the painting to be kind of loose and watery. I'll do a touch of some watery Hooker's Green towards the top right. Okay, so next up, I'm gonna take some VanDyke Brown and just layer a touch of this brown in the left bottom corner and the bottom right. Just kind of layering over the Hooker's Green just to give a little bit more depth and kind of build the dimension. I'm gonna add a touch of it in this darker area here. Okay. All right, next I want to take some olive green, and I'm going to take a good amount of it just to tap in, using my size 6 brush, a little bit of texture. So I'm literally just tapping the tip of my brush just below this area of the Hooker's Green, and I'm just adding this really loose texture. I'm going to do some over towards the right as well. And then I'm just going to bring that tapping texture towards the bottom slightly. Okay, and while that area kind of sets a little bit, I'm going to paint the silhouette of a mountain here. And I'm going to start with a touch of our VanDyke Brown mixed with some Prussian Blue, just a little bit of Prussian Blue. And I'll start with doing just 2 small layers of mountains. And I'm going to start over towards this right edge area and kind of move it slightly upward and then bring it back down and up again. Just like that. Then I'm just going to take some plain water and just pull from that wet water line and drag it downward. I'm going to take a little bit more of that color for the mountain I just mixed with the Prussian Blue and VanDyke Brown and just do a touch more of that color, and then just grab some water and just drag it slightly downward. All right, so now we have kind of our meadow bleeding into the mountains a bit, but that's not a big deal. We'll now just let everything set and dry before we move on to some more wet into dry details. Now that this layer of mountains is dry, I'm just gonna do a second one, and I'm gonna mix a higher concentration of VanDyke Brown with Prussian Blue, just to make a deeper color. And I am going to follow the same technique as before, but I'm going to start on the left side, and this one's going to go slightly higher. And it's going to be a shorter, kind of stubbier mountain. And then I'll have it slope back up slightly again. And then I'm just gonna take some water on my brush and again, just buff out all of that wet and wet from that line. And then I'm just gonna do a second layer of pigment. And then from there, just do a little bit of water to smooth out that transition. And again, I'm just gonna add even a third layer of pigment because it's kind of watering down or lifting. And then from here, I'm just going to drag down some of that area here with just plain water. And that is my dog scratching itself. Hi, Mira. She's a funny one. Anywho, I'm just going to allow this area to just set and dry, and then we'll add some more detail once this second layer dries up. Okay, now that that mountain layer is dry, I'm just gonna help define it a little bit using my size 2 brush and just using the color we mixed up. I just want to help define some of this mountain edge just a little bit in a couple areas. So I'm just going to glide my brush really loosely across. Doesn't have to go all the way across, it's just a nice loose interpretation. And then from there, I simply just want to take my wet size 2 brush with a little bit of water and just kind of gradually buff out that line and just take it slightly above in the mountain area. And then from here, after I've added that subtle detail, I want to add some more texture to our grass. But before I go to town with the texture there, I'm going to start to add our flowers. So for the orange, I am using this really bright cadmium-free orange by Winsor and Newton. I'm just gonna take my size 6 brush and simply add a good amount of water to this and really rub up against the dried pigment well, so that way I get a high concentration of pigment. And I really want this to be almost as opaque as possible. If you have orange gouache, that would also totally work, but I'm sticking with mainly watercolor other than my white gouache that I commonly use in my landscapes. And I'm just gonna rub my size 2 brush here really well against this orange. And then I'm gonna go in some of these lighter areas and just tap my brush to add a few blobs of orange. And I'm simply just using the tip of my brush and layering different shapes of loose petals here. And always just kind of reloading my brush as needed. But here I'm just doing a cluster, and you could see some of the orange formations of the petals are overlapping slightly on each other. Some are almost like this dainty heart shape. Some are just a simple cone kind of shape, or just a nice little tap of the brush. You could see there's a slight point at the bottom and it fans out up towards the top, so almost like an upside down cone shape there. And I just wanting to get just some loose interpretations of California poppies here. So once I get that loose cone shape, I just simply add a few dainty dots of the orange kind of scattered, just to show that there's some off in the distance. So we've got kind of this flow of some closer up poppies, and then it kind of fades out into some farther away ones. So again, just really light pressure with my hand. I'm going to do just a few here in this slightly lighter area as well. And again, some are dainty and small, some are slightly larger. I'm going to do a little bit of a few over here. And then just a few little dots way off in the distance as well. Okay, so we've got our poppies laid out. I also wanted to add maybe just a few simple white tulips. Oh, I got a little orange in my sky. That's okay, not a problem. I am going to just take a clean size 6 brush, just rinse it off really well, and then leave it slightly damp and just kind of go over that orange dot just to lift some of the orange up. Sometimes that happens. No big deal. So just clean water, buffing it out with the tip of the brush and some light pressure, and that's kind of how you can erase with watercolor. And by golly, I just found another orange spot, so yeah, I'll just do that same thing. Not a huge deal. Okay, perfect. All right, so now I'm gonna take some white gouache and do a few really simple tulip shapes, and they're gonna be closer to the viewer. And I need to add a little bit more water to my brush here. And I'm gonna start with just a really simple, rounded, almost heart shape to start. And then some tulips could be just like that and then have a petal off towards one side. Then I'll do one kind of small budded one towards the right, and just kind of play with the different sizes and variants. Like this one here has 2 petals on the side. It's nice and full. This one's just more of a rounded shape. So here you can have freedom to just play with the layout. Okay, so there are our tulips. Now all that's left to do is add some details for some base stems to our landscape, so that way this doesn't look like floating flowers. So I'm gonna mix up into the color we had previously for the dark mountains. I'm gonna mix up some olive green into there and some hooker's green. And then just a touch of Prussian Blue. And we will be using our size 2 brush. And I'm simply just going to add a few little loose base stems for the flowers. And they're slightly curved in different directions. And again, very loose and simple. From there, after I just do some thin, dainty curves at the base of each of these flowers, I'm gonna do just a few strokes pointing upward with my size 2 brush, just like this. Just these simple, really whimsical brush strokes just to give a little bit more texture around the flowers and some more grassy detail. And I'll just kind of carry that over a little bit towards the center slightly, just like that. And again, just doing this upward motion just to give a little bit of loose texture here. It's almost like I'm painting green little eyelashes. Okay, and then from here, I'm just gonna take a little bit of this color and lightly tap some texture below the poppies here. So just doing these simple green dash lines, just like that. And then kind of just carrying it over down below with whatever paint's left. So that way it looks like these have some connection to the greenery. And I'll do the same thing over on this side where I'm just gonna do these tiny dashes at the base of the greenery to start. Just like that. And then from there, I'm just going to kind of drag it down a little bit further below. Kind of dry brushing slightly with the tip of the brush. And then before I move on, I'm just gonna take a little bit more paint and just do a few delicate thin dashes in between just some of the gaps between the floating poppies, just so we could get some essence of the connection between the stem and the base of the poppies. So just using really light pressure. Okay. And then I'm just gonna carry over the same process of just a few of these little dainty dash lines and then buffing it out, dragging it slightly down below, and then just adding a couple little vertical dashes to connect the poppies. And onto our last one. This one's gonna be a little bit less detailed, so I'm not going to add little stems when the poppies are so far in view for this distant one, but I'm just gonna add a little bit of texture down below. And then I'm just gonna carry over some more texture towards the right. And before I finish, I'm just gonna add a little bit more depth by adding some dark green, just using the same green that we've been working with for the stems off towards the left here. Just wanna add a little bit more dimension. So I'm just tapping my size 2 brush just down below both of the mountain edges at the base. Just tapping to get really loose texture here, allowing the center to be kind of lit, and then I'm going to add maybe a patch of deeper green in this open area here that kind of slopes down slightly. Again, just really loose tapping with my brush to get this nice texture. Okay, and then I'll just lightly add a few more darker brush strokes below the poppies here, just off towards this left side edge. Okay. All right, if you know me, sometimes I need to come back to the painting and I notice something else I want to add before I'm completely finished. So I just want to add a few more dainty tulips in some of these lower areas. So just some small kind of upside down triangles or cone shapes. I'm gonna add some more water to my brush to make it easier to glide on the page. I just wanna add a few just like super dainty, delicate ones that are a little bit closer to the bottom of the page. Thank you so much for joining me for today's watercolor spring tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed this one. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any further landscape tutorials.